Okay, so hello and welcome to the review of the Russian Grand Prix 2019. And yeah, we are a bit late, but then we have other jobs to do as well. So yeah, we have Ben with us here tonight as always. Hi, Ben.
Hello, yes, I say busy times, but always glad to talk about the Grand Prix.
Yeah, of course. We got to take time out of our busy schedules within commerce to discuss F1 as usual. So yeah, speaking of usual, it was another usual weekend where we had Mercedes 1-2.
Yeah, usual weekend for Russia, isn't it? That's 100% record still intact. Yeah,
Ah,
I
man,
think it
since
was.
1913. I mean, we need to notify some people who might not be able to grasp what the dynamic of the record is, because Mercedes have been undefeated since what 1913 here.
Yeah, there has never been a Russian Grand Prix not won by Mercedes.
Ah,
Yeah,
so
so I mean, it only came back on the calendar in
in
2014, but
yeah,
there was two races, one in 1913 and 14, both won by Mercedes-powered cars.
yeah. I mean, and just a question to start this off. The Russian Grand Prix returned to the calendar in 2014, and 2014 is the year when Mercedes started dominating the sport, and they have dominated since. So, do you think that Mercedes are kind of lucky to have this 100 and something year streak?
Um, yeah, I mean, yeah, I think you're right to point out in the fact I don't think it's anything. I mean, like, obviously, I can't speak for the 1913-14 races, but we'll put those
Nah,
aside.
the
I
Titanic
can't
was
speak.
great.
Yeah, true. Um, I mean, I can't speak for why. I don't think that this track is anything in particular that favours Mercedes. If you know what I'm saying, like,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't
yeah.
feel like there's a feature of this track which means Mercedes should beat the rest. And obviously, 2014 to 16, very simple. Why Mercedes won? They had the best car by a long way. And again, even the last 2 years, still had the best car, and because they moved it from early in the season till late in the season. You know, this is when Mercedes really came on strong in both the 17 and 18 championships, where Hamilton kind of
Yeah.
was really in the midst of turning around deficits.
Hmm.
So in that sense, yeah, I don't think it's anything about the track. I think it's more the timing of when it came onto the calendar, and obviously, some would argue Mercedes are lucky to still hold on to it after this race.
Yeah. So coming on to this race, so the only starting point, I guess, would be Ferrari and the great legacy of team orders with them.
Oh dear, yeah. I mean, where to start with this, wasn't it? I feel like this wasn't a race which was, it was exciting without there being lots of on-track action. Kind of, I think the off-track dynamics and the strategy was what made this race an exciting one.
Yeah, I mean,
And
now that you mention it, I think apart from Albon, particularly, apart from Albon, I think every single one of the races had a pretty much lonely race, if I can call it that. And yet we have so many talking points at the end of it. Curtsy
yeah,
Ferrari.
absolutely, yeah. It was kind of like intrigue over actual on-track battles, and yeah, Ferrari, it's a strange one, isn't it? Obviously, Vettel getting the toe at the start off Leclerc, getting past Hamilton and getting into the race lead, and then the team really early in the race, wasn't it, saying that we're going to do this swap. And I mean, I thought that was a quite incredible decision. Hamilton was only a couple of seconds behind Leclerc. And, uh, if Vettel had slowed down to let him by, then Hamilton would have been right on the pair. And obviously, Hamilton gets by on medium tyres with the quicker tyres to go onto, I mean, that's pretty much game over for Ferrari right there. And I mean, to me, it just seemed like needless disruption to their race. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah. I
yeah,
mean, now that you mention it, I think I can draw a parallel. May not be a parallel somewhat, but I don't remember which race in 2018. But there was a race in 2018 where the Toro Rosso drivers, Brendan Hartley and Pierre Gasly was in front of Hartley, and Sainz was just behind Hartley, and Gasly's engineer instructed him to swap, and Gasly just wouldn't. And he used the same excuses that Vettel used in this race, that he just needs to close up to me and then he can overtake. He can overtake me if he can get close enough. And Hartley said, I'm right up his arse. and Sainz is going to overtake me if you don't let him swap. But then, yeah, the engineer kept screaming driver swap, and it never happened. And kind of seems like the story here this race as well, that both the engineers kept screaming swap, swap, but then Vettel never made it happen.
No, and I mean, I can understand in this first part of the race why he didn't. I think Hamilton was too close. And I think when the race is getting going, Ferrari should have just put their foot down and, got away. Because if you look at the strategy matchup, the Ferrari was starting on the soft tyres and the Mercedes were on the mediums. So
Yeah.
when Ferrari had to take advantage of the quicker tyre and just get as far away up the road as they could, and there wasn't the need or the time to be kind of messing around with who's in the lead. They could have done that in the pit stops, which they did, but they could have just from the start been like, "We'll do this in the pits, Charles." They could have just, if they'd have literally just said, "Charles, we'll swap in the pits, we'll give you the undercut," then that would have been fine. But they insisted on trying to do it on track, and it just became a big mess. And the thing is, like, I'll give my opinion. I'll come to you on it. Did they need to do that in the first place? Because if you think about the nature of the Russian track, there's the big straight, and on the start line, always going to get a big toe from behind. And
Yeah.
whether or not Charles willingly gave Vettel the toe, Vettel would have got the toe anyway, and it was very likely on quicker tyres he would have got by Hamilton and Leclerc as he did. So did Ferrari actually need to specify Leclerc, you give Vettel the toe to get him past Hamilton? Was that necessary?
Yeah. I think you hit the nail on the head with this being quite the big mess, as you termed it. And I think it's quite appropriate that it was indeed a very big mess because. And I think from the point of view of both of us here, I think Vettel was quite right in saying that. I think there was a team radio message from Vettel where he said that I would have got him anyways, and I believe that is kind of true. Like you said, that Vettel would have got the toe anyways, and Leclerc didn't have any choice. And what happened after Vettel overtook Charles on track? In my opinion, it was quite childish from Leclerc in the way he reacted to it, the entire situation. I mean, yeah, okay, your teammate overtook you on track, which wasn't planned according to the initial plan, which shouldn't have been a plan in the first place.
Yeah.
But yeah, fine, according to the plan, he overtook you. But then, couldn't you wait for at least 5 laps before you start complaining?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right there in saying. I mean, to be honest, I put a lot of blame on the plan because, we know what Charles is like. We know how very kind of by the book is. He's like, well, you promised me this, you've not delivered on this, and he's been stung by Ferrari before. So Ferrari made their own problems because they made Charles expect to be in the lead. And
Yeah.
Charles, as soon as he wasn't, he was on the radio saying, why am I in the lead? You've let Vettel overtake me, which is true. But at the same time, they're like, in himself, he needs to recognise the lack of sense what he was proposing. If Charles had his way, Vettel would have got by him on the home straight and then immediately slowed down to let him back through again.
Yeah.
And I just don't see the sense in that strategy and where he thought that would be a good idea. Ferrari made the problem by giving him expectations that he was gonna get the win.
Yeah, exactly. No, now that you mention it, just to expand on your point, we need to remember one thing, that Sebastian Vettel is not Kimi Räikkönen. He is not going to move over to let his teammate by, especially when he has got the lead on merit. And I still believe that he got the lead on his own merit and not because of some pre-order team plan.
I agree.
Yeah. So it was kind of, and on the Sunday, Vettel did look like the quicker man in that Ferrari, and it would have been quite unfair if they did activate the switch which they didn't and then eventually did. But then, yeah, that's a mess, as you said. But yeah, I mean, it's quite unfair in the way I feel that Vettel was treated the Raikkonen way. I mean, if you get what I'm saying,
Yeah.
they instructed him to move out of the way, and quite unlike Kimi, he didn't. And then they eventually made the switch in the pits by making Sebastian stay out for longer than he would have wanted.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah, I mean, that's just kind of the next point I was going to come on to. Ferrari were kind of unwilling to adapt because at that point in the race, for Sebastian Vettel was the quicker driver. Probably, I would say in the race,
hmm
period, Sebastian Vettel was the quicker Ferrari. He got past Leclerc, and then he proved that it wasn't just the big toe you always get at Russia that got him by Leclerc. Like he proved he was a lot quicker, and he was pulling away from Charles. And I think he pulled out the gap to around over 4 seconds at one point. So
yeah,
it's
yeah,
like Vettel was the quicker driver, but Ferrari, because they were so wedded to this plan that they tied themselves to pre-race. Yeah, when I think the worst thing Vettel could have done was come on the radio and say, when he did, it was like, yeah, my tyres are going off, because Ferrari thought, wow, this is the perfect opportunity. I'm just going to leave him out there. Because the undercut isn't as powerful at Singapore, isn't as powerful at Russia than it is at Singapore, and
yeah.
Ferrari, Leclerc wasn't guaranteed the overtake just by purely having the undercut. If Sebastian Vettel had to come in the following lap, there's a reasonable chance he would have kept the lead. So Ferrari had to keep him out those extra 3 or 4 laps and make sure his tyres went off, which was it was a shame to watch because I think everybody could see it was never spoken over the radio or anything, but everyone could see what was happening. They could see Vettel was being kept out too long, and yeah. I mean, yeah, it wasn't the best thing to see. I was disappointed as a race fan, as a fan of as obviously we know the loyalties I have, but you always want to see like good racing, and I was a bit disappointed because what it meant was Vettel. I know his engine failed literally right after the pits, but he was a significant amount of time behind Charles. So for the likelihood of him battling Charles for the race lead, if things had have continued on as normal, was slim because of the time he'd lost in the pits. Um,
Yeah,
which was disappointing. I just think Ferrari, which makes me fearful of a time when there is Ferrari dominance because I worry because what you have to credit Mercedes for is over the last the first 3 years of the hybrid era, that they were the dominant force, completely unrivaled, but they let their drivers race, and we got great racing, and we had this amazing Hamilton-Rosberg battle, and I fear for a time when if Ferrari become like that because it's not in Ferrari's DNA to sit back and go, okay, you guys can race. It's
Mhm.
that's not the Ferrari way. So
Yeah.
I'm not as excited for this all Ferrari dominance as maybe everyone else is because I've just got horrible visions of Ferrari just over managing the hell out of every single race and just having these races like this one where each driver's on the radio like, oh, let me through, why have you done this to me and stuff like
Yeah,
this.
yeah, exactly. Which is why I feel that the way Charles reacted to it was kind of showed his flaws in a way. And just to expand on one of the points that you mentioned, that uh, if we do have a Ferrari dominance coming, it's not a very good sign for the team as a whole. I mean, neither of the drivers are in the drivers' championship, and the constructors' championship is, well, mathematically possible, but not really possible. So
I mean,
when you
Mercedes
are
can
in,
win it next time.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So when you are in neither of the championships, do you really have to care so much about which driver is in the lead that you literally just throw away one of your driver's races?
Exactly, I agree with that. And to kind of add another dimension to that decision, if Ferrari are a team that want one driver, they want their top man to back, but do you not feel like, as you say, they're out of both championships realistically, Is this not an opportunity to just let them race on track and towards now and end of the season, say to the two of them, right, each of you stake your claim to be the number one guy next season, and
Yeah,
let them race and see who is the best driver, and then we moving forward from there. Because next season it's very likely Mercedes are gonna. We all know Mercedes will put all their eggs in Hamilton's basket, and it might come down to a situation where Ferrari will need to put all their eggs in the basket of one of their drivers, and they need to know who that guy is. A potential comparison I'll make is the 2007 championship. When Raikkonen, ironically, was world champion. That season, Raikkonen was Ferrari's man. He was if Ferrari picked up points, the lead car was usually Raikkonen. But all
yeah.
season long, there was this rivalry between Hamilton and Alonso, taking points off each other, hindering each other, blocking each other in qualifying. There was all this
Monaco.
massive. There was all this there was all this massive battle.
Yeah,
Which
yeah, exactly.
in the end of the day, Hamilton missed out that championship by 1 point, I think, and
Yeah,
Alonso was not very further back either. So that the two of them tripped each other over, and Raikkonen won. And Ferrari don't want to leave themselves on the other end of that situation this time, which you could kind of see happening.
yeah. No, I mean, now that you mentioned, I mean, just to expand on the point that you mentioned, uh, Ferrari had a plan coming into this race. After qualifying, they had a certain plan in mind. But then, what my viewpoint on this exactly is, and you can tell me if you agree on this or not. But the thing is, a plan is only a good plan if your opponents have no idea what you're doing. And
Yes.
and contrary to that, everybody, including Will Buxton, I guess, knew what Ferrari was trying to do.
Yeah, yeah. It was kind of the worst kept secret, wasn't it? And at the same time, more than anything, it was just embarrassing, wasn't it? Like, you got this
Yeah.
this great team like Ferrari, and you're sitting there arguing over the swap like 5 laps into a race, and you're thinking, what is happening here? This is ridiculous.
Yeah, exactly. And so moving on to the ridiculous, from the ridiculous to the solid, can we have a word on your man who actually won the race, Lewis Hamilton?
Yeah, and I absolutely, and I kind of want to leap to his defence here because it's easy for people to say the virtual safety car won this race for him, and it started a whole debate about is the virtual safety car fair and all this nonsense. Like it is what it is, and it helps sometimes, it hinders sometimes. Like these things happen in races. The safety car and the virtual safety car change the nature of races. There's nothing we can do about that.
Yeah.
But Hamilton drove actually a great race, and in that first stint, he kept pace with the Ferraris. The Ferraris were the quicker car on the quicker tyres, and he kind of kept pace. And he left himself in a situation where something happened. The rotator car came out. He had the time to actually make a pit stop and then get back ahead of Leclerc. Where I mean, as you notice, Valtteri didn't. So it shows that Hamilton kind of got that extra out of his car and was clinging on, to the Ferraris to make that strategy work. So although things did fall into his lap, like it wasn't effortless. Like things fell into his lap because of the way he drove. It wasn't like Leclerc just lost acres of time. As I say, Valtteri ended up behind him
Yeah.
initially before Leclerc made the second pit stop. So, things fell his way, but he kind of worked to make sure they fell his way.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. And I mean, the way Hamilton and Mercedes both handled this race is kind of, I mean, if you can remember properly, it's kind of similar to China 2018, where Daniel Ricciardo got his win, taking advantage of the virtual safety car and eventually winning the race. I mean, basically putting yourself in the position where if the front runners fall in some way or the other, you are right there to take advantage of the situation. And I
Yeah,
think that is what exactly Mercedes needed to do, and that is what they exactly did. And in the end, ended up with a 1-2.
yeah, exactly. And the whole medium tyre strategy was based around that anyway, because and it was clever in a way because they turned up expecting Ferrari to be the quicker car, and I think you could probably say certainly over one lap they were. Mercedes coming to it more with race pace, but they were like, well, let's not match them up like for like. If we do that, Ferrari will probably beat us. Mercedes planned for a strategy which relied on if something happens, we'll be there, and even then, we will never know if Mercedes could have had a say chasing the Ferraris down because they didn't need to, but they tried something a bit different, and the medium strategy was always going to work a lot better if there's a safety car, a safety car,
Mhm.
and it paid off. So you've got to kind of credit Mercedes for not just following the crowd and going on the softs in qualifying in Q2.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think a lot of people would miss that on first glance, but then yeah, strategy played a key role in Mercedes' win, and I think so far this season at least, I think Mercedes have been bang on with the strategy apart from Singapore, I guess, where it was the only time where Mercedes had an off day with strategy, and apart from that, I think they've been pretty bang on with strategy so far as this season goes.
Yeah, I think so. That's the Mercedes brand, isn't it? I think that's why they've been formidable as well because they, as the kind of the competition's increased, it's allowed Mercedes to kind of show the extra edge to their game that we weren't entirely sure was there because when it came down to when they were dominant, they didn't need strategy really, but now
Mhm.
it was something which is kind of adding extra dimension to their kind of greatness as a team.
Yeah,
When
exactly. Yeah.
when they've been challenged, their strategy department has been come out on top more often than it's been beaten. A lot more often.
Yeah, I mean, now that you mentioned it, in the context of this season at least, I mean, you have the top three teams who are competing constantly, but the thing is, Mercedes are such a team, like
Yeah.
every cog in the wheel knows its role and it knows how to do its role properly. And then you have Ferrari, where the drivers are fighting amongst themselves and the team doesn't know what to do. And then you have Red Bull, where there is no second driver up until the first 12 races.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing is that Red Bull are always hamstring on strategy because there's very rarely someone there, or there is never there someone to help Verstappen out, so they could never kind of put a two-car strategy. And
Yeah.
Ferrari have shown that they can't manage two cars, so
So, Mercedes are like, this is like 2016 all over again, but yeah.
yeah.
So, we'll have to move on to Charles Leclerc, eventually third. Do you think deserved, or do you think he was hard done by, or do you think he deserved it for his whining?
I didn't. I mean, yeah, I didn't like his whining on the radio. I've got to say, but I'm gonna I'm gonna place more of the blame on the team for allowing
Yeah,
him
exactly. Yeah.
to believe that he was had a right to that position, which I don't think he did, but the team told him he did, so I can't really have a go at him for complaining about it too much. But
Mhm.
yeah, he got a bit unlucky, didn't he? I don't think when he looks back he'll be that happy with like his pace in general over the weekend because I thought clearly Vettel outpaced him this weekend, and when he had the chance, I mean, I agreed with the decision to kind of go onto the softs after the safety car. I mean, the second safety car that George Russell brought out. I
Yeah.
agreed with that decision because I mean, I was thinking he could go on to get the win, but a word for Valtteri.
Yeah,
Valtteri
even
defended
Crofty was.
absolutely. Um, I was quite convinced Leclerc was going to win. I think I ended messaging you in the race. Surely Leclerc wins this now. I was like, but yeah,
Yeah.
I thought Bottas though was brilliant in his defence, and once he saw off the initial kind of onslaught from Leclerc, the kind of nature of the track in Russia meant it was difficult to overtake, and Valtteri was able to hold him off enough so that when he got onto the straights, he could use all his deploy, all his energy, and negate that straight line at speed advantage. And we're talking about the strategy and the whole two-car thing. Mercedes damn sure needed that because if Valtteri had have let him by at the first time of asking, I think Leclerc would have won the race. So
Mhm.
absolutely brilliant defensive work and brilliant team play as well from Valtteri.
Yeah, and
He was. I guess he was defending for himself as well, obviously, because he didn't want to lose
yeah.
position. But for Mercedes, it was brilliant kind of team play.
Yeah, no, I mean, in my personal opinion, obviously, but this race kind of showed that if Hamilton wasn't there in the team, you could actually, if you're a betting man, bet on Valtteri Bottas for a world championship.
Really? You,
Yeah, I
I,
mean, see, the thing is, apart from the Merc guys, right now Leclerc is best of the rest, overtaking Verstappen in the last race, I guess. Yeah, so he defended Leclerc for, well, pretty much, well, 2/3 of the race, or at least 1/3 of the race, pretty much, and he didn't make a single mistake. So he's a pretty good defender. Probably Manchester United should hire him.
Absolutely. A great defender going right now. Um, yeah, this is kind of Valtteri, isn't it? He's not consistent enough for me. I mean, this race was brilliant, and I feel like this is Valtteri 2.0 we saw at the start of the season, and then it disappeared, and then
Mhm.
now it's come back again. It's like I think he's yet to sustain a, a run of form over a whole season, which maybe would be different if he was a team leader. Maybe he loses motivation in the middle as he sees Hamilton's lead grow and grow.
Yeah.
Um, but when it comes to the end of the season and Mercedes ask him to step up for the team, he's always there doing that. To be fair, so interesting. I'm not sure we'll ever be in that situation, to be honest. But that's the other fact about that. But it would be interesting. I would back a Leclerc or a Vettel to beat Valtteri in a championship fight if he was the team leader. But yeah, it's a marginal one. It's an interesting
Yeah, no,
topic.
I mean, since you mentioned Valtteri 2.0, I mean, I've made a discovery on myself, which I would like to put out there, and people might agree or disagree with it. But then I think Valtteri 2.0 basically signifies he's going to finish P2 in the championship.
I mean, I think that's it. I mean, that's even under threat, isn't it? That's something I didn't think I'd be saying after summer break. Um, he's got a do some quick maths. He's got a 34-point buffer, but the way Ferrari are kind of coming on strong, that's not guaranteed. He's going to have, he's going to want to be fight. He's going to want to be looking up, but he's going to have to be looking down. I think trying to look after his P2
Yeah,
in the championship.
and I mean, Red Bull has got a couple of strong tracks coming up as well, and Max is on his tail as well.
Yeah, exactly. Max is only 3 points behind Charles. So yeah, Valtteri's got a lot of work to do, and I feel like he's not really going to have a shot at the championship because when it comes to kind of the race lead, if Mercedes are fighting desperately to win the race, Valtteri's going to be asked to play the team game. So his championship fight is realistically over, isn't it? So he's going to try and have to look
Yeah,
after.
if I have to explain that in one sentence, I'd say Valtteri is not going to win the championship because Lewis Hamilton.
Well, Valtteri's not going to be allowed to win the championship
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I mean,
Toto Wolff is going to be like, no, you're not the driver we want to win. You're going to have to
Mercedes.
let Lewis through. Plan 44.
Exactly. I mean, there's an argument Mercedes aren't the best car on the grid anymore, so they're going to be in a real fight all these last 6 races with Ferrari or Red Bull for the win. So they're not going to be letting Val. They're not going to be in a situation where it's a Ferrari 1-2 and they're going to have Valtteri finishing P3 and Lewis fighting Max for like P4 and 5, are they? So Valtteri is going to be sacrificed at every opportunity to kind of push Hamilton at the table. Valtteri's best hope for race wins towards the end of the season is that Lewis Hamilton gets the championship done as soon as possible.
Or he has a horrendous engine blowout for 3 races consecutively or something.
Yeah, or that. Very true, very true.
Yeah, could happen. It happened to
Yeah.
Kubica, it happened to Sainz.
You never know, you never know. But
Yeah,
such
2016,
yeah, exactly. Oh, painful memory that. Glad
Yeah,
Malaysia's not on the calendar anymore.
that's a Lewis fan speaking. But then, yeah. So we have to cover top six fast because we've gone on long on this. But then, yeah. So another man who has had two quiet races in a row, but then has produced strong results. Max Verstappen, starting ninth on the grid, making his way up to P4. had a quiet race. Could have pitted at the end for the fastest lap, but then Pierre Gasly isn't his teammate anymore, so he couldn't do it.
Yeah, see, I didn't get that. I thought it was quite clear that he didn't have the gap. The commentators on the broadcast seemed like bemused he didn't pit, but he didn't have the gap. I swear, like he didn't even have the gap to Albon. Like he would have come out like 2 or 3 seconds behind Albon. Like you'd have to kind of get him past Albon first, and then which would then kind of lose time, and the tyres wouldn't be as good. So, and there wasn't a safe gap as well behind Albon and Sainz as well. So I
Yeah.
never thought the gap was open. So I thought it was quite strange that the commentators had you believe it was a ridiculous decision not to pit. To me, the gap was never there. It was it was marginal, but the gap was never comfortably there. So I can't say I was surprised they didn't do that. But even then, like I think the other cars in the race had the pace to go and do it. They still had good pace, and they could have turned all their settings up and kind of got that fastest lap. And I'm sure Red Bull were also conscious of that fact. Because Hamilton was asking the last lap, like, oh, what do I need to do for the fastest lap? So I feel like the other teams had them covered. So Red Bull were just like, oh, what's the point? Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I don't really know whether Christian Horner would be happy or sad by that particular sequence of events. But I mean, in that moment, he probably wished Pierre Gasly was still in the car. But then, yeah, coming on to Alex Albon, how impressed are you with him?
Yeah, a brilliant race, wasn't it? Pit lane to P5, one of those. We like to use this term on this podcast. So they maximised the weekend.
Yeah.
Red Bull, both drivers have done that. It's kind of I feel bad for Albon in a way that he's always fighting through the midfield, isn't he? Since he's come in, he's had like a horrible run of like grid demotions because of engine parts and new parts and what have you, and all the
Yeah, his own mistakes as well to an extent. Right?
yeah, true. But there has been a healthy amount of just wear and tear, and Red Bull Red Bull aren't a car which kind of treats its engine parts as kindly as other teams. They quite frequently you see Red Bulls.
Cyril and Bull would agree.
Absolutely, yeah. Quite frequently, the Red Bulls don't look after their engines as good as everyone else, as good as the top two certainly. So, yeah, towards the end of the season, it can be a bit painful, and Red Bull have to always be quite tactical about what races they choose, to kind of take new parts, what races they sacrifice because they know they won't be as good. And obviously, Russia was a race this weekend where they were like, well, we can afford to take these penalties because we don't think we'll be as good on pace anyway. But yeah, they ended up as best outside of Mercedes and Ferrari, so they can't really complain. But yeah, I say just a while on Albon, yeah, carving through the field. Important pass on Sainz as well towards the end. Obviously, virtual safety car helped, but that's just the way it goes. And yeah, I think he's done all he can really to kind of stake a claim for that seat for next season. I mean, they can't really have asked any more. The amount of time he's kind of just put his car behind Max, and that's all they really ask for.
Yeah, I mean, coming to that, I think a lot of people have been discussing this question. Do you think the fight between Gasly and Albon for the 2020 Red Bull seat is pretty much over now after Russia?
I think it is, but I'm not sure. I wouldn't call this race a decisive factor because as we've seen with Kvyat, Red Bull don't go back. Red Bull make a decision and that's final. Red Bull they found Sebastian Vettel, and every single driver they always see, oh, is he the next Vettel? Is he a world champion? Will he win races and championship in our car? And they obviously know Gasly isn't going to do that. So I don't think Gasly will ever get back to that Red Bull team. Because you could make the argument who deserves it more this season, Kvyat or Albon. Kvyat, if we're looking at nothing else, Kvyat should have got that promotion, but Red Bull don't
Mm,
go back. So I think it
mm.
is done. I think Pierre, he's just going to hang around in F1 as long as Toro Rosso let him and try just got to try and impress other teams because that Red Bull door's closed.
Yeah, pretty
And they,
pretty
and they
sad.
and they certainly wouldn't go back to that soon as well. Like he had let's not beat around the bush. He had a horrendous run in that car. He was dreadful.
Mm,
The results were
mm.
dreadful. They're not
Yeah.
in the space of what 9 Toro Rosso races. No matter how well he does, that was still his performances were only 9 races ago. In that short amount of time, they're not going to think, oh, he's ready for Red Bull now, because he was good
Mm.
in the Toro Rosso last season. So
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
that's I'm sorry, Pierre, but I think that door's closed.
Yeah, yeah, and both him and his teammates should look for new doors now. But coming on to new doors, Carlos Sainz seems to have broken through another one. P6
Yes,
in the end, best of the rest once again. I really didn't believe that I would say this for any other driver, but then I'm really running out of superlatives for this guy. The last time I said this was for Hamilton. Obviously, he's not on par with Hamilton, but then it's pretty damn impressive this season.
yeah, exactly. We've talked about what a battle the midfield is, and it is, and there's some really weekend to weekend, different drivers are strong, different teams are strong, but the one consistent has always been Carlos Sainz. Carlos Sainz has
Yeah.
consistently been best to the rest, pumping in, I don't know, 6th place, 5th place, 7th place, whatever the best of the rest target has been, he's been there. And, when Gasly wasn't in Red Bull, he was beating some of the top teams as well. So
Yeah.
Carlos Sainz is as, if you're ranking driver performance for the whole season, Carlos Sainz is well up there with drivers of the season, brilliant. And he's now 3 points behind Gasly, which over the course of the rest of the season, you'd back him to pick up 3 more points than Gasly. And then I think he's got a real shout of holding on to P6 when he gets it. I really do.
Well, Albon is right up his arse.
Sure, Albon is 14 points behind, but I mean, if you look at this race, 5th and 6th, Albon's gained 2 points on him. So
Yeah.
it might need within there. Maybe Albon has a bit of bad luck, and maybe Sainz finishes ahead of him one race. But if Sainz consistently finishes best of the rest for the end of the season, I'm not
Hmm.
sure Albon will make up enough points on him.
Yeah, but then
For me,
if Albon gets one podium, it changes the entire game.
it does. It does. Yeah, that's absolutely true. I just feel like the level Albon's at in the car at the minute, I'm not sure on merit, without circumstances going his way, he would
Mm.
beat any of the other guys in the top cars. But that's not really criticism of him. It's just, he's been parachuting so late. And, let's not forget with Albon, I think sometimes he's overlooked. He is a rookie. This is his first season in F1.
Yeah, I mean, like you almost tend to forget, to be honest, like the kind of meteoric rise that he's had over the season. It's
Yeah.
really kind of, I mean, considering the situation that he is in right now, it's kind
Mm.
of difficult to believe that this is his first season in Formula One.
It is. And let's not forget, like, he wasn't really in the championship fight in F2. Either last season, Norris and Russell were the ones really going at it, and Albon
Yeah,
kind of
this, I
fell
mean,
away, wasn't he?
yeah, the fight between Russell, Norris, and Albon was kind of like the 2018-2019 Barclays Premier League between Man City, Liverpool, and Spurs. They were in it for a little while and they fell off.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So yeah, he's come from nowhere really. And to be fair, he's holding his own in that Red Bull. He's not kind of blowing everyone away by any means, but he's certainly holding his own. And I feel like with this experience in him and going on to next season, I'm sure we'll kind of see some good races where he can kind of take it more to the top guys, which will be good to see.
Yeah, I wish Tottenham could replicate what Albon is doing, but then that's a story for another day. But yeah, coming on to the man who finished P7, Sergio Perez. Well, Checo. what do you even say about him? Nothing that he does will ever manage to surprise me, because this guy is, at least when his engine is working, he's consistent as hell.
Yeah, exactly. It's never a good point scoring finish for Perez. Yeah, I mean, he's qualified in 11th. You know, Racing Point don't seem to have the kind of pace over one lap of the rest of the midfield teams, but when it comes to race pace, and like Perez is right there or thereabouts. You know, it's just very impressive. What can you really say? I mean, it's one of those races, probably haven't seen a lot of it on the TV, but
Yeah.
you know, but brilliant. 6 more points in the bank. Very,
Yeah.
you know, he's such a good driver, isn't he, for the midfield? Like, he's such a good driver. Any midfield team would happily take him.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I almost called them Force India again, but then
Oh,
probably because I'm an Indian. But Racing Point, yeah, Racing Point have him for the next 3 years. Yeah. So coming on to the man who finished P8 on the road, but then eventually managed to finish P9 because of his penalty, and according to the words of Gunther Steiner, stupid, idiotic penalty. Kevin Magnussen, finally some points for Haas. I was quite impressed by Magnussen in this race, if I be honest with you.
Yes, I completely agree. It was one of the kind of highlights of the race. It was really good to see Magnussen getting points. It's been such a long, difficult season for Haas, hasn't it? You know, I'm really glad
Mhm.
they've managed to kind of get a good point scoring position. You know, he looked on for kind of sick at one point, didn't he? Kind of fell off a
Yeah,
bit, and
yeah.
the
Mhm.
tyres weren't great, which is still an issue for Haas. But yeah, I really don't get that penalty. I feel like it's one of the situations where it's kind of like an arbitrary 5 second penalty, which doesn't really take into account the situation the driver's in.
Yeah,
Like it would have been, I feel like he's got a point. It would have been a lot harder, a lot more dangerous for him to try and go around the bollard, and he still lost plenty of time. He lost the position. You know, he didn't gain from it at all. He kind of fell back into the clutches of drivers behind him. I feel like it was a harsh 5 seconds. Um, but having said that, you then have to credit him again for managing to pull the gap, um, to allow him to even get points, because you know obviously the cars all finished very bunched up towards the end of the race, and if he'd have lost even I think like 9 tenths, he'd have been 10th, and then he kind of saved himself, but only by a couple of seconds either way, and he would have finished P11. So for him to kind of pull out those laps, knowing what he needed to do, was really good, really brilliant.
yeah, exactly. And like you mentioned in one of the previous podcasts, that Haas need two drivers who can deliver the results when the car is actually all right. And in this race, once again, I mean, while we're talking about Kevin Magnussen, let's as well talk about his teammate, who yet again, probably not through his own fault this time, but yet again failed to capitalize on, well, guessing by Magnussen's performance, the team's pace.
Yeah, exactly. You know, when Haas's car is good, which it has rarely been, to be honest. Apart from this, exactly when this weekend came around, for the first time in a long time, they feel like they can score good points. They needed somebody to actually deliver it, and only K-Man did that. Yeah, the Grosjean incident. That's just I don't know. Kind of Giovinazzi's going to get pinched by Grosjean and Ricardo, but it's just one of those. It's another clumsy collision, isn't it? You feel like it's a little bit unnecessary. Ruins your race right from the start, and it's kind of like you question whether another driver would have got into that situation that Roman did.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can feel sorry for both, I think, Daniel Ricciardo and Roman Grosjean, but then in the end, you only have to ask one question: what is that Alpha made of? How did he survive that?
Yeah, though Giovinazzi has done very well there, I've got to say. He's done brilliantly to kind of keep going. But the thing, let's just go. with that incident, you can say it's unlucky on Grosjean and Ricardo, but is it? It gets to a stage where you ask, is it bad luck? Because when you think of clumsy collisions and incidents, it's always those two names that pop up. It's always Ricardo. It's always Grosjean got himself involved in contact, or Ricardo's got himself involved in contact. It's always the same driver. So you
Well,
start to
Russell
think,
isn't surprised.
exact Russell is not surprised. But it's like, is it a surprise? Is it bad luck? Because these same two drivers keep tripping over other cars. It's like, when do you start to say, actually, let's look inwardly at those drivers now? And I feel like it's another race for Ricardo where he's just got himself caught up. I just don't think he. I really feel like Ricardo. The points won't tell you this, but I feel like Ricardo's had a really poor season.
That I think brings us perfectly on to what I was about to go on to. The man who finished P10, Nico Hulkenberg, the man who is going to be replaced next season, and it does look like his Formula One future is in doubt. But right now, he is level on points with his much more experienced, much more podiumed and race-winned teammate Daniel Ricciardo, 34 and 34 for Hulk and Ricciardo right now. So, I mean, first of all, do you really think that the Hulk does not deserve to be on the grid next year? And following that, yeah, I mean, you kind of answered that when you said that Ricciardo has had a poor season, but Hulkenberg doesn't really deserve what he's getting right now, does he?
No, absolutely not. Hulkenberg definitely deserves to be on the grid. The next season. I think he's a really solid driver. This is again another point scoring race for him. Solid drive, got a bit caught out by things weren't really his fault. And yeah, I think it would be a real shame if he didn't get in on the grid next season, because I just feel like if you were to kind of draw a ranking of all the drivers, there'd be a number of drivers that he would be ahead of. He does swear, doesn't he? He's come out in the media and he said, I'm in talks with a team boss over a seat. I can't really see that being anyone other than Alfa Romeo. I'm not sure who else that would be, unless they've revived.
I
Rather
mean,
Haas gone, isn't it? So actually, I'm not sure.
I do have an interesting question for you right now. I mean, imagine if you're Nico Hulkenberg right now. What option? I mean, you already know the options that exist, and I think the entire world probably knows the options by now. But what option would you really go for, and what do you think is the best option for Hulkenberg right now?
I mean, if we're looking at it realistically, where could he go? I think the Red Bull door's closed.
Yeah.
I'm not ever sure how open that was, how true those rumours were.
It was just
But
then Marco closed it.
Yeah. So the Red Bull door's closed. Realistically, there is Williams and Alpha. They're where he'll end up. If he stays in F1, he'll be at one of those two teams, which are a shame, because I feel like both of us stepped down from where he is now, which is harsh in itself. That he has to take a step down. But because of the pace F1 moves at, I don't feel like he could step away from the formula, drive somewhere else, and then come back and have the same reputation. I just don't feel that would happen. Because of the pace everything goes at. I feel like if he wants to kind of stay in F1, he's got to stay in the sport and try and build his way back up. And the best place to do that would probably be Alpha, but because certainly in the shorter term they're going to have a better car than the Williams. But it's whether he would commit to a long-term project at Williams to kind of take them back to the top, because George Russell isn't going to be there forever, because Mercedes will have him before long. And it's whether Hulkenberg at 32 thinks, should I give one of the final chapters of my career, should I say I'll give Williams like 3 or 4 years and I'll try and take them off the grid and be their main man? Potentially that might be a place to go, because Alpha are kind of more got links to Ferrari, and they'll kind of want to get the new young gun in. So he could easily be in a situation where he gets to the Alpha team, and then in a year or two's time, a hot young prospect comes along, who Ferrari will push to number 1 status, whether it's Mick Schumacher or someone else. So he could be kind of replaced again then. So maybe Williams, if he can bear some short term pain, but I mean, I'm not going to lie, the options aren't great. there would be kind of a big deal of compromise on his side. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'll tell you what I would do if I was Hulkenberg, because I would like to believe I have an interesting take on this, because the thing is, Kimi Raikkonen isn't going to be there for the next 5 years, right?
No.
He's going to retain his seat, and he's going to be there for 2020. But it is highly unlikely that he will continue at Alfa Romeo post 2020. I mean, from 2021 onwards. So if Hulkenberg somehow convinces himself and his management to sit out the 2020 season, which he has done before, he did sit out a season before in 2011. So if he manages to convince himself to sit out the 2020 season, at the end of 2020, Alfa Romeo might be on the lookout for a Formula One driver who is quite experienced.
Yeah. True. It's with that, it's whether because I think Alpha would see him as the steady hand to the young guy who they would have, because Alfa Romeo would line up would be Hulkenberg, and they'd have a young prospect, a young Ferrari prospect. So he would kind of be in that mold of the steady head, while the young guy kind of goes out, makes his mistakes and whatnot. It's whether he'd be happy
Exactly,
with
right.
that.
So he's kind of in a way the almost the perfect replacement for Kimi if and when he goes out.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree
I
with
mean,
that.
without a world championship and a race win and a podium, but
I could see him being tempted by that if he kind of could get some kind of guarantee from Alpha that they would do that. I could see Alpha in a year's time being open to that possibility for sure.
yeah, exactly. And I mean, we haven't talked about one of your men who finished in P8. I mean, shifting abruptly from Hulkenberg, obviously, but then we seem to have pretty much cleared out the situation with Hulkenberg. So, yeah, I'm going to move on to your man who finished P8 eventually. P9 on the road, but then P8. Deserved set of points, and yeah, he picks up some more points. Landon Norris, a man.
Yeah, good. He's kind of getting on a roll now, isn't he? Getting some consistent points on the board, which is always good to see. Climbing the driver's standings as he absolutely deserves to, and he now sits only behind Albon and Gasly, who have both been in Red Bulls, so you can understand that.
Yeah.
And his teammate Carlos Sainz. I feel like this is a position where Lando deserves to be. He's
Yeah.
been. You can kind of, the other two are outliers because they've been in Red Bulls, but he's been the best like one of the best drivers behind Carlos Sainz this season. But yeah, obviously got a bit hampered by the virtual safety car, but fought his way back through as well as he could. I think in the race he was a bit disappointed. He did end up behind Perez, but another solid weekend for him, for McLaren as well, who've kind of consolidated after a little wobble in the constructors. I think they'll be fine now for the rest of the season, and they've passed 100 points for the first time since I think 2014.
Fernando Alonso, well, he frowns in some part of the world.
Yeah, exactly. 2014 was the season Kevin Magnussen picked up a podium for the team as well. So never forget the hybrid era started off with Kevin Magnussen on the podium. Never forget.
The McLarens have always had unfinished business with the Magnussens. if you have listened to Beyond the Grid, you will know what I'm saying about what I'm speaking about, basically.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So moving on to the finishes outside the points, Lance Stroll being Lance Stroll at P11. Daniil Kvyat, though, what I mean, what more could have gone wrong for this man on this weekend?
Oh, I don't know. His luck is just out, isn't it? Absolutely.
Like it's always been with his Formula One career. I mean, I feel sorry saying that, but then yeah, that's the reality, man.
Absolutely. I mean, even down to the little things like, the FIA was so uptight they wouldn't let him change his helmet.
Oh, that hurts more than driving for Williams.
I think it does. Oh no.
I mean, let's not get depressed and talk about Kvyat's terrible luck. But moving on to the man who finished 13th, Kimi Raikkonen. He hasn't finished in the points since the summer break. Are you witnessing a change here, Ben?
Yeah, I really like his early season. Not that Kimi ever looks like he has mojo, but he showed it on the track. Yeah, he's the early season Kimi isn't really there anymore. I'm not sure whether he's lost motivation. Because I mean the car's still there because he's kind of gone down and Giovinazzi's gone up. So it's not just the car's gone from underneath. I'm not sure. I think Kimi at his stage of his career, is he as motivated? Now he's put points on the board. He can kind of see that the McLarens and the Renaults and the Racing Points even have kind of moved past Alpha. Is he as motivated? Because I feel like Kimi doesn't have anything more to prove in this sport anymore. Like, he's been world champion. We know he's a solid driver. Everyone knows that. There's nothing more to gain. He's kind of just driving in Formula One because he wants to at this point, just for the sake of being in the sport. And so I don't know when the season gets deep and he's not in any fight for anything. I don't know how he stays motivated, because it's not like he's driving to keep his seat. Because if he doesn't keep his seat, he'll just retire, won't he? Whereas people like Giovinazzi, his teammate, if he loses his seat, there's more kind of repercussions, and he's desperate to hang on to it and whatnot. But if Kimi goes, and I'm sure he'll be happy with that.
Yeah, I mean, well, I don't know if you've noticed, and I don't know if most of the people have noticed this, but his decline in form kind of seems to coincide with Renault's decision to drop Hulkenberg. So do you think Nico is secretly talking to him?
There's a secret friendship we didn't know about there, and Kimi's just tanking to try and get Nico in that car.
Could be.
I like the theory.
That's not realistic. Let's just point that out. But moving on to the man who finished 14th, Pierre Gasly. Well, really, nothing sort of a weekend for Toro Rosso, wasn't it?
Yeah, not too much to say really. Obviously, they nearly ended up taking each other out. Probably lucky they both ended up finishing the race in the end. But yeah, they never really were on the pace. No, it didn't matter if they did, to be honest. They just saved themselves a nice repair bill, and that's what they took for them with the weekend.
Well, yeah. Franz Tost would be happy.
Their accountants would have enjoyed this weekend, but not really anyone else.
Might even give Gasly a hike. Who knows? But well, in hindsight, both of the Toro Rossos beat both the Alfa Romeos.
Yeah, they did, and maybe it's just a general theme. The Alfa car, I don't know. It's a difficult one with Alfa because I'm not sure. I just don't really know where their car's at, because I'm not sure where Kimi's at. I think Kimi's level's dropped, so the car's level maybe seemed to have dropped. But to comment on Toro Rosso, it's kind of good to see. I know they haven't got points this weekend, so it does seem strange to say this, but it's kind of good to see them keeping a consistent level of performance, because we're used to, by this point, Toro Rosso having big drops off towards the end of the season. But to see them still competing to a reasonable level, that as they have been all season, really, at these kind of at this stage of the season is good, and it's good to see because we're so used to Toro Rosso completely falling off a cliff after the summer break, and all. It,
I mean, just to mention this, that with still, I think, 5 rounds to go, they almost have double the amount of points they had in the entire last season.
yeah,
Toro Rosso.
exactly, and that just proves, doesn't it? It's they're in a bit of a battle as well with Racing Point, and they need to kind of they do need to kind of be wary of that because the form Perez is in, you would probably back for Racing Point to score a healthy amount of points. So they do need to raise their game slightly and try and beat Racing Point, which will be important for them.
Well, we have Perez versus Kvyat, a tasty battle, and Stroll versus Gasly, which is another tasty battle about who goes out in Q1 first.
Yeah.
But yeah, I
you're
mean,
so right.
no, but yeah, I mean, you're right when you say that they are in a battle with Racing Point for P6 in the constructors. But Toro Rosso getting almost double the amount of points with 5 races to go compared to what they got in the entire last season. Do you think that is advancement in the car, or do you think it's Germany?
That's a good point. I think Germany is a good factor, but I think their performance across the board has been a big step up from last year, and even if they go to some weekends they finish like 11th, 12th, it's still the car is still at a better level than it was last year. It's able to compete in more races, so I still think they've made a good move forward. But Germany obviously did help them massively.
Yeah, it obviously did help. But then, do you think that apart from being the car being better, do you think that I mean, I would compare Gasly in 2018 to Kvyat in 2019, getting consistent results and being the top driver in the team. But do you think that Toro Rosso getting to where they are right now is testimonial to the fact that how much better Albon and Gasly, both of them, are to Hartley?
I think so. I think that's a very good point. I did feel bad for Brendan. We've talked about this before. Brendan had some bad luck, but he didn't have the pace when he wasn't getting smacked into the wall. So it's been a struggle because of the churn between Red Bull getting new drivers and Toro Rosso. Like the Red Bull Driver Academy is good, but at the pace they're eating through drivers, it's obviously going to be a point where the quality isn't as good. So it's difficult to keep finding these good drivers that can kind of take the team forward. So sometimes you end up getting the Hartleys. I think I don't know the exact number, but like Hartley hadn't raced in a single seater category for like 5 or 6 years when he went into the Toro Rosso seat. So that was completely a left field decision. So yeah, the level of driver they've got is good at the moment and is better than what they have had for sure.
Yeah, well, that has to play a part. But then that brings us to, well, the non-finishers in this race, because 15 people finished this race. So the non-finishers in this race, it's a long list, and we've mentioned almost all of them previously. But, well, Robert Kubica, George Russell, Williams' first double retirement of the season, double DNF. Sebastian Vettel with the MG UK failure, bring back the V12s. I'm going to ignore one word said in the middle. Daniel Ricciardo and Roman Grosjean as usual. But the strangest retirement of the season, probably Robert Kubica. Why did Williams retire him, Ben?
Well, quite concerningly, the official word we're getting, isn't it? It's save parts. Because he wasn't competing for anything in the race. They wanted to save parts. And if that's what they're going with, why have they gone to any race this season?
Apart from Germany.
Well, Germany, yeah. They didn't. They got lucky. They didn't know that. They didn't turn up to Germany thinking they'd be any good. Yeah, if they're going to save parts because they're not competing in the race, they wouldn't have raced at all this season. So That's a strange one.
I mean, if they wanted to save parts, they probably shouldn't have raced in 2018 as well.
Exactly. um,
Because the car has been on a steady, probably the steadiest decline I've seen in Formula One for some time. And Haas is giving them strong competition in that
yeah,
regard.
the Haas's decline is not steady though. Haas are on a much steeper decline than Williams, but yeah, they've kind of ended up at a similar point. But Haas have got there a lot quicker because they were very good last season. Probably should have
Ah,
got fourth. The car
well,
they had.
I mean, probably because Williams had Stroll as their lead driver and Haas had Magnussen.
Very true. Very true. But if Haas had maximised their performance last season, they would have got fourth. And this season, absolutely nowhere. So yeah, it's an interesting one. I feel like there's something Williams aren't telling us, or there's something going on. Maybe they haven't. There's something there. I don't think that's the real reason. But if it is, it's a real concern. It maybe hints at some kind of financial difficulties or some lack of preparation. Now they wouldn't have enough parts. So it's quite concerning either way.
Well, I have another concern that I want to get out of the way. This comes actually from the previous weekend, where in the I think in the Singapore Grand Prix or at Monza, I can't really remember. But do you remember the weekend where a lot of the Formula One drivers' girlfriends were present, and Nico Hulkenberg's girlfriend was present, and Pierre Gasly's girlfriend was present as well, and they were all getting quite a lot of camera time, more than George Russell and Robert Kubica. And, and incidentally, if I remember correctly, there was a clip of Claire Williams sitting, and Claire Williams, and instead of the description being Williams' team principal, it was written girlfriend of George Russell. Do you think that's reality?
I mean, he's done a chance of staying in the team, no harm if that's the case. Oh, that's a
The announcers are just getting in on the fun right now. I mean, the telecasters.
yeah. Oh, that's an unfortunate slip, isn't it? By the subtitle guy.
Anyway, so that was a pretty long one, but yeah, that brings us to the end of Russia, and well, it was long because Ferrari messed it up. So yeah, we'll be back with Japan soon, where we expect Red Bull to be strong because Honda ain't giving up.
Honda are back.
Oh yeah, they are back. Yeah, and they mean business. They've taken all their penalties, so they don't have to serve penalties. And I just hope that Max and Albon don't manage to crash out in turn one.
Oh, please no.
Anyway, so yeah, we'll see you as soon as Japan's done.